What's up, Dream Builder? Are you someone who's interested in creating a life by your design through all things real estate? Well, I can assure you, you are in the right place. Join me, your host, Casanova Brooks. I'm an award-winning real estate agent and investor as we uncover the top tips, strategies, and the mindset of the top real estate entrepreneurs across the world. Stay locked in because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. What's up, Dream Nation? We are back again, and we have an episode today that I'm excited to learn about and I'm excited to share with you. On the line today, we have a couple of my good friends, Mr. Anthony and also Mr. Cameron. You want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
What's up, Dream Nation? How are you guys?
It is an honor to be here, Casso. We've been following you, have some great content, and honored to be on your podcast. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. It's definitely a pleasure, and I'm excited to, like I said, share your stories. The way that I always start off the introductions for everyone is I compare us as entrepreneurs and thought leaders, change makers, to superheroes. And the reason being is because we're flying around the world, we're putting on our cape, and we're trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And so I know that you all have been solving very big problems in the financial space. But one of the ways that I say this is a lot of the times we know who Superman is and we know he wears that S on the chest. But what we can't really describe is who the guy is behind the cape, which is that Clark Kent. And so for a lot of people, they might know who you guys are on the front side, the Superman. But what they don't know is who are your Clark Kents behind the cape. So outside of the financial world, give us the backside of how you got here and who you really are.
Ooh, that's good.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Kevin, you want to go first?
Sure. Kind of the backstory, or I think you're asking me kind of just describe myself, right? And then a little bit about my story. And, man, at the end of the day, I'm just a kid from Idaho, to be honest, man. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene, and small town. I think when I was growing up, we had 30,000 people in that town. And just a great experience growing up. And fortunately, I was able to meet my wife in high school. And we're high school sweethearts. We've been together for, 21, 22 years now. And so that right there is a blessing. But I've got 3 kids, 10, 8, and 6. And, man, I'm pretty boring at the end of the day, to be honest, man. I come to work.
He is pretty boring.
I come to work and I go home and I hang out with them. And right now I look at it as, man, we've only got so many kind of summers to spend with my kids that I try not to make this business number one priority. It's faith, family, and then this thing that we've got going here. So that's kind of my priorities. But, man, how I got into the industry just briefly was I was just a small business owner. And I was looking for every advantage that I could find, and I didn't have an HR kind of department for my business. It was really just me. And so what I started doing is I started looking for retirement programs for myself. And, man, to summarize, is everything that I saw out there was not geared towards a business owner or an entrepreneur. It was really geared towards the W-2 employee with that mindset of, hey, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to put in my 8 hours, and then I'm going to do this for the next 30 years, and I'm going to retire when I'm 60 and a half and start drawing down my assets. And that plan and that strategy never made sense to me, and I was fortunate enough to come across a strategy. I actually read a book. It was called Become Your Own Banker when I was mid-20s. And I'll tell you what, man, that book absolutely changed my life. It changed my perspective on finances. It changed my perspective on how to be an entrepreneur and where to put my money. And those were some 2 really big kind of turning points in my life. And then I met this guy about 10 years ago as well. So
Cool.
Well, for me, born and raised in Las Vegas, raised by a single mother. After high school, went into the Army. That's how I paid for my way to go to college. And in college, I studied accounting and got a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers. During that time, I met my wife in high school. Well, actually, she met me in middle school. I was her paper boy, and she fell madly in love with me, but I was too focused on my scholarly duties. But she eventually tracked me down once I got out of the Army, and we got married right after I graduated. And I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, got my CPA, was a CFO for a chain of restaurants. And then, you know what, I enjoyed being what I thought was the security of having a job. My health insurance, I had my paycheck every 2 weeks. I got a couple weeks vacation, but it wasn't fulfilling to me. It kind of got, first of all, it's accounting, so it's not that exciting. Then a friend of mine started his own firm a couple years before, and he showed me the numbers on his CPA firm, and I'm like, you know what? If I can make half of that, I'd be happy. Because my goal wasn't the dollars, it was spending time with my family. You know, with my father not being around, I wanted to be the father that I never had. So
Right.
I wanted the world to be around them. But as most entrepreneurs will know, like, they've never worked harder than when they work for themselves. And then I got where I was just working way too many hours, barely seeing my kids. And then my daughter had some health issues. And, well, to maybe take a step farther back, when '08 happened, that really shook me to the core. Because as an entrepreneur, when I first started out, I didn't want to put money in, I didn't want to lock up money till I'm 60 years old, right? Because as an entrepreneur, I needed it in my business. So the problem was I didn't have a plan. And without a plan, money just kept on leaking. You know, I just did nothing. And the next, you know, I was probably going out to dinner more, going on vacations more. And then I realized I need to get my stuff together. And then fortunately, when '08 happened, I didn't feel so guilty about not maxing out my 401k, right? Because everybody's 401k turned into a 201k. And I saw on my tax clients the devastation that this had. And I remember a client came into me and he's like, Anthony, I did everything right. I stayed out of debt. I maxed out my 401k. I paid off my house. And now you're telling me, even though I retired, I need to go back to work, but I'm 70 years old. Unemployment's double digits. Who's going to hire me? And my heart went out to him. And I also realized I was on that same path. Like, there's a financial crash about every 10 years. In 2008, in 2000, the 90s, the 80s, 70s. What's interesting right now is the longest we've had without a true recession. And I think this next one is going to be harder. But what I realized is I needed to do something different. And so I noticed some of my clients, not only did they not get hurt, they excelled. Those were the ones buying your neighbor's house for 50 cents on the dollar and then selling it right away or renting it. They saw this crash as an opportunity. And I started looking back, you know what, if there's a crash about every 10 years, I want to be in the position to take advantage of these opportunities. So I started talking with them, you know, how are you thinking? How are you thinking different than what everybody else? What books are you reading? And so I started practicing some of these things myself. And then I ended up having another business on the financial services, plus my CPA firm. Oh, but I also had this family on the side, which was supposed to be my priority, but it was on the back burner. So I had to make a decision. And my daughter told me this point, or she just had major brain surgery in 2012, and she's going to be okay. But she told me she's going away to college. And I go, Sarah, you're going to go to an online all-girls Christian academy. But I couldn't find one. So I figured just in case she wins, I want to spend more time with her. So I sold my CPA firm and kind of started teaching these principles that I learned. And then Cameron and I joined forces a few years ago, and now here we are. Oh, I guess I have two kids, 26, 26, and he's married, having his first baby, ironically, April 15th. And then my daughter is 21.
Cool. Congratulations and blessings to you. Yeah, that's such an amazing time. Me having two young kids, 9-year-old and then 3-year-old. I definitely am always in the trenches on that. But so much to unpack there, so many epiphanies. And the first thing I want to ask is, so you mentioned how to be your own banker. Let's talk about that, because that's something that financial literacy is where I think so many people lack. And even if you have a good job, or even if you are a successful entrepreneur, there's a whole nother level to financial literacy. And I would love to know, first, would you say that book is equally as important or better than Rich Dad Poor Dad? Or are they just because Rich, and the reason why I asked that is because we talk a lot real estate on this show, right? And so a lot of people know Rich Dad Poor Dad, but when you talk about how to be your own banker, that's really just building a solid foundation. And so I would just want to know, and we don't want to create a competition, but if someone has to read one book first, which one are you going to say?
I'm going to say Become Your Own Banker.
I'm going to say Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Let me explain it here. Right? Is they are complementary of each other, right? And so I would hate to choose, but if I had to, I chose Become Your Own Banker because that's the lesser than the two known books. And Become Your Own Banker for me was life-changing. I read that book, and to be honest, I got pissed off. And I was upset because there was some very fundamental truths about money in that book that no one had ever told me before. And I was mad, and I was successful. I was making good money, and man, it just completely changed the way that I looked at things. And the way that I would explain the two of them is Become Your Own Banker is more of a cash management system, and the infinite banking process is where are we going to store our money where we have absolute control over it, absolute safety, security, certainty over those dollars. The Rich Dad Poor Dad mentality is where are we going to put our dollars to create wealth over someone's lifetime? Right? And so that's the complementary between the two. People are always focused on, hey, what am I going to do to create the wealth while they've got money sitting in a checking account, savings account that is just getting eaten away by inflation.
Got it. All right. What about you? What would you say, Anthony?
Well, it's hard if there's only one book, but what Rich Dad Poor Dad really helped me get my mind right, where I'm not focused on getting a job. I'm focused on creating passive income, getting financial freedom so my passive income is more than my monthly expenses. So, but I think, well, what's interesting, we say that our business Infinite Wealth combines the teaching of Rich Dad Poor Dad with Becoming Your Own Banker. And I think, to me, the most important thing I think would be going after creating that passive income. And then once you're there, if you can incorporate the infinite banking with your real estate investing, you will be able to achieve your goals faster and with less time and pay less in tax. Which again, the recovering CPA in me always has my eye on taxes.
Yeah, no,
and we can't go wrong either one.
Got it. No, and I definitely don't. I'm excited. I've never read How to Be Your Own Banker, but that is definitely next on my list. I've become a big reader over the last couple of years, as everyone knows. And it's so crazy. I think Tony Robbins says, by you reading, you get an opportunity to turn decades into days, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on how fast that you can read a book, right? And so people have learned these strategies over decades, and you can turn it into days by the way that you're able to pick up those nuggets. So I definitely agree that neither one you can go wrong with, and you must read both of them to really have a strong foundation. But first, I guess, question I want to ask is, a lot of people have heard it or seen it so far that you've mentioned this concept of infinite banking a couple of times. Can you describe what exactly is infinite banking?
Yeah, Anthony's got a good analogy. I'll let him take this one.
First, let me ask you, Casanova, do you use a rewards credit card?
I do.
Okay. Now, why do you use rewards credit card and not just pay cash?
Because I'm going to use the same amount. I'm going to use it either way. So might as well get paid for using that same money.
Bingo.
Perfect.
Okay. If you can understand that, you can understand infinite banking. Because all we're doing is we're using a financial tool that will allow us that if we put our money through that first and then buy real estate, we're going to get some extra benefits. And so by using the rewards credit card, that's the one extra step to get what you want, right? Use a rewards credit card and you get miles. All right. If you use the infinite banking concept, you still buy that real estate by running it through your cash management tool. Instead of getting miles, you're going to get more money. So the key thing is we're not saying do infinite banking or real estate or your business. The great thing about this concept is that this is an and. We want you to get into real estate. We want you to start a business. We want you to be in control of your finances, right? For you to be financially independent, but not just dollars, more importantly, cents, We need to learn how to treat money. And with using the infinite banking, particularly for real estate, man, it just allows you to compound your returns, and we're actually creating some tax deductions.
Got it. Now, so is this, if I'm understanding it right, is it a software? Is it just a formula? If someone's hearing infinite banking for the first time and they say, okay, but you said we got to use this tool, what exactly is the tool?
Yeah, so I'd break down infinite banking into two parts, product and process. And so to directly answer your question, that's the product, is what are we going to be using? Where are we going to keep our money? And where we use it is we put it into a properly structured dividend-paying whole life insurance product. And the reason that we do that is not because Anthony and I choose to do this, is we've spent a lot of time looking at banks over the last 10, 12 years of my life and what they do with money, and what they do with their most secure, safest money is they put it into what they call Tier 1 capital. And what they do is they put it into the exact same product that we recommend clients put it into, which is high cash value, low death benefit to life insurance product. And so what you're doing is essentially you're creating a cash account that's going to earn you, it's going to pay you maybe 4 or 5% annually each year. But the biggest feature, there's two things to that. Number one is that you've got access to it, so you can come back and use it anytime that you want to. But number two is you can actually
penalty?
Without penalty, you can actually take a loan against your cash value. And that little feature is what continues the compound interest curve over somebody's lifetime. And so really what we do is we educate people on the features of these types of products and how to design it. And that loan piece is huge, especially for people with real estate, because what you're going to do, now I'm going to switch over to the process part of this, is we've got the product, we're going to put our money in there, we retain access to it, but when we take a loan against our cash value, we're going to go buy an asset that provides cash flow. And now what you do is you have that cash flow that comes back to replenish your capital inside of that policy. And so you're going to retain the same growth that you would have gotten on that asset, but then in addition, just like Anthony said, because we're using that policy as collateral, that those dollars are continuing to compound over our lifetime. And man, the sky's the limit as far as kind of performance and the additional money that you can have at the end of the day if you add just that one extra step.
Yeah, no, that's super powerful. So then talk about entities and things like that, because people say, okay, if there's somebody that's listening out there and they say, oh my God, I would love to do that. It sounds so smart. Like, is this something that I need to go to a CPA, or is this something I need to go to a life insurance person to talk about? Or is this something that I could do on my own?
Very good question.
Great question. Yeah.
Great question. Now, what I would say is that you need to go somebody who lives and breathes infinite banking, right? Because
would that person know that concept, or no, I'm sorry, would they know that word, or would it just be the concept?
Well, let me tell you, if they don't know the word, they don't know the concept, and they're not the person to help you, right? Because I like to say, this ain't your mama's whole life insurance, right? Because typical life insurance, we're thinking a death benefit and no cash value. Just like Cameron said, we're designing these very differently. We're trying to get as much cash in there as possible that the IRS will allow, and we have clients using the money as quickly as 30 days later. We're putting the money in and then taking it out. Now, this is the product we're using, like Cameron said, is life insurance, but it's not because of the death benefit. It's because with life insurance, because really what we're looking at, we need a safe place to store cash in between deals, and we need to have some reserves. I mean, so what we would look for is a place, first, the money has to be liquid. So when an opportunity comes, we have easy access to it without penalty, right? It needs to grow at least more than inflation, right? Because if we're just looking at it. But also, we want this to be protected. Each state's a little different, but in many states, 100% of your cash value is asset protected. So what that means, if there's an issue, if you get sued on one of your properties or your kid gets in a car accident or something happens, your savings is going to be protected from lawsuits. Okay. Now, but as I had said, even though it's life insurance, it's designed very differently. It's not designed for death benefit. It's designed for cash value. And also the design is important. But what's also important is somebody to teach you how to use it, right? You need to know, when should I take a loan? When should I not? How do I take a loan? How do I pay it back? And so you need to be working with somebody who specializes in infinite banking. And you can find somebody. If you go to infinitebanking.org, there's a practitioner finder, because once this came out, a lot of people started, hey, I'm selling you IBC and I'm going to teach you how to do it, but they're not designing the policy correctly. They're not doing the proper service. So what Nelson Nash, and he's the author of the infinite banking concept, he created like a certification. So agents have to take a class, they have to pass a test, have a code of ethics. They also need to be sponsored in. Not just anybody can join. You have to be sponsored by another practitioner to make sure that you are designing and doing the products efficiently. So the answer to your question, which was a long answer, but
I love it.
Is infinitebanking.org. And then you can find somebody who specializes in infinite banking. And we did do a video on the top 5 questions to ask your agent before you do it. But in my view, if you go to somebody who's on the practitioner's website, you are going to be in good hands.
Cool. No, we definitely appreciate that. And this is a new concept to me as well. So it's very, very interesting. Again, financial literacy, no matter how successful that you may be, and it's always a journey, every single one of us. But I think that's something that a lot of people are probably going to be like, wow, I didn't know that. One other question that I have that comes to my mind is when you talk about buying real estate on the back end, right, and being able to have all of the tax advantages and, using the depreciation and everything else. Mm-hmm. Once you use that, does it have to be an entity? Like, does the infinite banking concept or whatever it is, does that have to be an entity to own the real estate, or are you buying it just like in a regular LLC?
Well, that's a great thing is what this can be owned individually. In fact, that's what we recommend our clients do. Like, it could be owned by a corporation or LLC, but the problem is, that LLC, we don't know how long it's going to be. Like, you might close it in 10, 20 years, but you're still going to want your policy. So when we take it in and out of an LLC, there could be some tax consequences. So we don't want to have that burden. But also, if it's an asset of the LLC and the LLC gets sued, they can attach it to the LLC's assets. So what we do, what our clients do is they have their policy owned individually. And if they have LLCs to start real estate, which is a great idea, then we loan the money personally to the corporation or to the LLC. So now that LLC has a debt on its books. So also that's helpful if that does get sued, the net worth or, on that entity is much less.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love having these types of conversations. I'll tell you, this was something that happened to me. What didn't happen to me, I guess. It was a conversation I had probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And someone had talked about the acquiring of LLCs just to put debt behind them, right? And because then this allows you to have bigger valuations for your business and things like that. And I never really thought of that. And everybody who I've talked to, which are pretty smart guys, a lot of people didn't really know. Because I guess I didn't think when Facebook's acquiring companies or any of these big companies that's acquiring companies, a lot of the times they're not really focused on if that company is going to be successful or not. But for their investors and their shareholders, when it comes time to count their earnings, they have to be able to dump off a lot of this debt onto something else. So what can we do? We can acquire a business that is not already performing well, and we can put that debt on it, but then that allows us to look better and have a better valuation. Am I hearing that right?
I don't, to me, like if you do have debt on the books, so let's say an LLC has a loan, right? Okay, so there's a loan, let's just say 100 grand, but then we have 100 grand in cash. So their balance sheet, the net effect is still going to be the same. So I don't know. I don't think I'm in the place to properly respond to that. I don't want to give misinformation.
Got it. And this is not going at Facebook, right? I just threw that out there because that was like the first company. But that was a concept that I listened to a lot of the conversation, and I was like, wow. And it made some sense to me of why some places do it. But I understand what you're saying. I think that when you go to buy, it keeps them separate, though, is what I guess the understanding that I had was like, yeah, that balance sheet is still at a zero. But at the same time, that you're not, I guess from what I understood, a bank is not evaluating your other 17 LLCs. They're evaluating you. And so it's an opportunity. You write that off or you expense that, whatever you do. But then on your balance sheet, you then got a way to basically, or got an opportunity to basically hide if you say $100,000 or something in debt. So
Okay.
I thought that was a very good concept, but yeah, more to learn about it. That's why I say it's always something new. And just like this infinite banking, I would have never known. So talk to me about, at the end of the day, where do you all see that the market, because you talked about this, you said we think that we're going into some type of a crash. Where do you think that the biggest crash is going to be? Do you think it's on the real estate side? Do you think that that's because houses have continued to go up? Is that what you're seeing on a lot of your clients? And if so, how are you telling them to correct it, because of the fact that you guys are big advocates of buying real estate on the back end after you implement the infinite banking strategy?
So there's a couple things there. Number one is when you're talking about the market, right, real estate market, there's a difference between somebody's personal residence and then kind of investment properties. And so most of our clients, they're looking at buying investment properties. And so the message that we have for them right now is that if you look at kind of where the economy is right now and where interest rates are, is what I would say is that right now there's more money than there are deals. Interest rates are low, inventory is extremely low, right?
Right.
That pendulum is going to swing. And so when that pendulum swings is capital and interest rates are going to rise, capital is going to get tighter. And so our clients are now putting themselves in a position by putting money into a policy that they can then access that when that pendulum does swing back and capital's tight to come by. And so now what we're saying is, as big of proponents as we are for personal banking and not relying on banks, man, I have clients that come to me and I say, hey, the best option for you right now is to go take a bank loan. Keep the cash in your policies and keep yourself liquid for opportunities, distressed opportunities that may come in the future, right? We have no idea what's going to happen, but my personal opinion would be in the real estate market is that, I mean, you see interest rates so low and they're pumping money into the market that I think the demand is going to continue for a couple of years. And once they start ratcheting up kind of the interest rates, then I think that's when everything's going to turn.
I think the biggest area, this might shock you, Casanova, and some of your listeners. I think the stock market is ready for a crash, right? I mean,
Really?
Well, here's what I look at it, and to me, this hit home. I forget the date, but I was we're in a pandemic, right? Unemployment is almost at an all-time high, almost where it was in 2009. U.S. citizens breached the Capitol, and the stock market went up 400 points. Like,
Doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make sense. I mean, I used to read books about the stock market, and it was, all right, let's focus on the price to earnings ratio. Or I was taught to focus on fundamentals, right? Earnings, price to earnings means like how many years will it take of their profit to earn back the stock at that price. The PE rate, what's interesting now, people aren't using the PE ratio anymore because it's not even there, right? So I think the stock market, that really shouldn't be a surprise. With the real estate market, I don't know exactly. And for me, I think one thing that definitely helped the increase in housing is the lower, the lowest interest rates. For example, my son just bought his first house, and he wasn't saying, "Look, I want to buy a house that's $400,000." He goes, He goes, "I can afford a mortgage." I'm just using some round numbers. That's $2,000 a month.
Right.
Okay, so when the interest rates went down, that $2,000 buys more. So I think there's some artificial inflation on the housing market, and when rates go up, the inverse is going to happen. So there's that, but then Cameron's buddy Biden is talking about a $15,000 first-time homebuyers credit.
Yeah.
Now, when you get, to me, I'm more of a free market guy. I think there's some natural laws, and when the government tries to restrict things, that it works for a while, but it will eventually blow up. And first of all, I don't know where we're going to get to $15,000, right? But that is going to pump things up. But what I tell people, real estate is an amazing asset, particularly from a tax point of view. But a lot of people, if you're buying on appreciation, I would be very careful. Okay. But what we recommend our clients, let's focus on cash flow. Let's make sure that this property cash flows every month. And then you know what? If the market crashes, it's okay. You're cash flowing, right? I mean, we're kind of ideally, we want to hold it. So even though it's cash flowing and maybe the value's going down, but unless you're selling, it doesn't matter, right? And each month that tenant is paying down your mortgage. And so just hold it out. Enjoy that cash flow. Yeah.
So many nuggets there. And I think anybody who's not a first timer to the show, they'll definitely already know this, and they're smiling. They're definitely happy to hear that, because it's coming from somebody who was and is a tax professional. So I know you say recovering CPA, but still the fact that you were a CPA, I mean, that gives us a lot of confidence. So I appreciate you both sharing that. One question that I have is, knowing what you know now, how much wiser that you are. If there was one thing that, looking back on your journey, you wish that you would have implemented sooner to accelerate your path on your journey, what would that thing be?
Man, it's hard to pick one question.
Yeah, I would go ahead. You got some?
I mean, part of you wants to say I would have started my infinite banking before that, but I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be silly. What I would say is I wouldn't be so fearful. There's some things I wanted to do, whether it's start a business or buy real estate. Like, I'm in Las Vegas. I heard tons of horror stories about real estate, not only about the tenants, but in here, people were buying properties that were negative cash flow, $200 a month. Okay, so negative from the beginning. That's not without any repairs. And then but it was appreciating $500 a month. So they're thinking on that balance sheet, but that had scared me. But what I wish I would have done is not be so fearful. Just do some more research and come to my own conclusions.
Oh, I love that. I think that's very, very smart.
I would say that I wish I would have had a mentor earlier,
but
and not Anthony. But by that, I mean, I look back and, I used to be a big golfer, and, I used to take a bunch of lessons to get better and for somebody else to kind of give me a critique. And when I got into business, I didn't do that. Right. I don't know why, if it's just kind of a independent mindset or what it is, but I think as a business owner, to have somebody else come in that is where you want to be, and to give you advice, but also give you some of those corrections or criticism and critiques along the way, I think those would be tremendous. So that'd be my advice for someone.
Yeah, no, I think those are very, very wise statements. I know for me, again, getting a mentor, getting just an association, whether you consider that person a mentor or not, we can learn something from everyone. And the more people that you have around you that are smarter than you, that are continually continuously challenging you, I think that's the way that we all grow at the end of the day. So I think getting a mentor is huge. And obviously having the concept of infinite banking or just financial literacy as a whole, not being so closed-minded, not being so fearful. Both of those are very powerful statements. So thank you for sharing those. This has definitely been a phenomenal conversation. The last question that I have for each of you all, I guess we have two last questions, but I guess the first one is, and this is something that I just started implementing, but I would be interested to hear both of your thoughts. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be, and what one question would you ask that person?
Cameron, you want to go first so I have time to think about it?
One person, dead or alive, and what question would I ask them?
It's a stumper.
It is. And I've been listening to your podcast, and the one I heard, I had a good one with Doug, which was very good about real estate. You didn't ask Doug those questions, but or
I just did this.
okay. But being honest, I would love to have dinner with Jesus, and one of my questions would be is, why is there so much evil and pain in this world?
That's a very, very good one. I would be interested to hear the answer. The creator of all, why is there? Yeah. What about you?
I'm going to ask him eventually, but
right. What about you, Cameron?
Is it going to be Paul Mitchell?
No.
A little side note, Cameron has beautiful hair, and I don't. And I always razz him about his love for Paul Mitchell hair products. But so we do that on our podcast quite a bit, but your listeners may not understand.
Actually, when you asked me, I had this thing come to mind, but I didn't want to say it. But I'm going to anyways. I'd go to dinner with my dad, and I'd ask him why my parents split up.
All right. No, I think that that's very, very valid. You've never asked him that, or is your dad still here? He's not here.
No, he's here. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So maybe that's a dream that you can turn into a reality. Cool.
From the DreamNation, right? Let's go. Deep.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And the last question is, there's somebody out there that's super inspired by both of you gentlemen, super inspired by the information that you've given off, and they want to change that path for their families and themselves, and they want to blaze a path similar to what you've done. But they have that little voice in their head, and we all have had that, and sometimes we still do have it, and it says that we're not strong enough, we're not smart enough, or maybe we just don't have enough resources. What's the one thing that you would leave this person with to get them to just take action?
We talked about books before, and one of my favorite books that I've read probably over the last 10 years is a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, but it's called Anti-Fragile, and it is hands down one of the most fundamental. I love this book, and his whole idea behind it's called Anti-Fragile, and the whole idea behind this book is that everyone in American language, English, understands what fragile is. And fragile means that if you have an object and you put it under stress or pressure, that it cracks and it breaks. And everyone believes that the opposite of that is robustness, which would be, hey, if you have an object that you put under stress or pressure, that it withstands that pressure. Anti-fragile, there's not a word in the English language for anti-fragile, which is the whole premise of this book, which means that if you have an object and you put it under stress or pressure, is that object needs that stress or pressure to grow and to get better. And so if somebody has those feelings of, man, you know what, I'm just not good enough, I can't do this, they need to come to the realization, number one, is that life isn't meant to be easy, and that these challenges are only making you better. And so for me, that's a great book. It gives a whole bunch of different examples from different industries, and I would recommend that book hands down.
Great. Thank you for sharing it.
And I tell you, I've struggled with that. I think we all have some self-esteem and some issues, right? And what I would say, instead of saying, why not you? My philosophy is if two people can do something, because if it's just one person, maybe it's an anomaly, right? But if two people can be successful or two people can accomplish something, why can't I do it? And you hear like some of these other stories, like Casanova, you're on our podcast, and man, dude, your story is so heartfelt, and so many people could have turned went down some of the wrong path, but you kept on plugging through it. And there's a bunch of Casanovas out there. Like there's a bunch of people who didn't have money or had difficult times or abuse or their parents or whatever. But if they can overcome that, there's no reason why you can't.
Facts. Fellas, this has been, again, phenomenal conversation. If no one else has told you today, I want to be the first one to say thank you, and I appreciate you both. For anybody who wants to stay connected, keep learning about infinite banking, where can they find you at?
They can find it at infinitewealthconsultants.com. That's our website. And then we also have a podcast, which you were on as well, as Infinite Wealth Podcast. And that's on all the major kind of carriers there.
And we are big on education. We want people to learn. And so one of the ways that we've done that is through an online course. And we do charge $500 for that. But if somebody wants to learn, we are not going to stop them. So we're going to have a special link. So infinitewealthconsultants.com/DreamNation. And in there, you can sign up and you can get free access to our course. There's no upsell. You know, our philosophy is we want to teach you this concept, and we want you to do it. And hopefully we prove that we can help you doing it. But if there's somebody else you can find that you connect with, do it. I mean, we just want you to move forward.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure we put all of those links in the show notes. But again, DreamNation, just as they said, you have to take action. You have to stand up for whatever you believe in and get uncomfortable, because if you do not and you do not execute, that dream that you have will only merely be a fantasy. That's all for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. If you've gotten anything out of this episode, do me a favor and head on over to iTunes if you have access and leave me a review. My whole goal is to make sure that I'm serving you all the right way. You're my tribe. You're who I care about. You're why I do this. So if you want to give me any type of thanks, or if you want to let me know whatever your thoughts or your feelings are from this episode or any other episode that you've listened to, leave me a rating or review. And also, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and even resources when it comes to leveling up your real estate game, head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. We have a really cool real estate section there, and it's something that I wish that I would have had when I first got started in real estate. So that's DreamNationAcademy.com. Don't wait. I'll see you on the other side.